thick gray sky hangs low over the city, blocking out the sun. Buildings fade into the distance, not because they are far away, but because the air itself has turned into a wall. Every breath feels heavier than it should. The streets are full. Life continues, but something is clearly wrong. This is not a temporary weather condition. This is smog, and for many cities around the world, it has become a daily reality. Smog is a form of severe air pollution. It is created when harmful gases, dust, and chemicals mix in the atmosphere. The main sources are vehicles, factories, power plants, and construction activities. Under certain weather conditions, especially when there is little wind, these pollutants become trapped close to the ground, forming a thick layer that covers entire urban areas. At first glance, smog might seem like just an environmental issue, something that affects how a city looks, but in reality, it goes much deeper. It directly affects human health, economic activity, and overall quality of life. Breathing in smog is not the same as breathing normal air. It contains fine particles known as PM 2.5. These particles are so small that they can enter the lungs and even pass into the bloodstream. Over time, this can lead to serious health problems, including asthma, heart disease, and lung cancer. Children and elderly people are the most vulnerable. For children, exposure to polluted air can affect lung development. For older adults, it can worsen existing health conditions. Even healthy adults are not safe. Long-term exposure slowly damages the body, often without immediate symptoms. From my point of view, one of the most troubling aspects of smog is how normalized it has become in some places. People wake up, check the air quality index like they check the weather, and decide whether it is safe to go outside. Masks are not worn for fashion or illness, but simply to breathe more safely. There are cities where schools close because the air is too dangerous. Outdoor activities are canceled. People are advised to stay indoors as if the outside world itself has become a threat. The causes of smog are not mysterious. Rapid urbanization plays a major role. As cities grow, more vehicles fill the roads, more buildings are constructed, energy demand increases, often relying on fossil fuels like coal and oil. All of this releases pollutants into the air. Traffic is one of the biggest contributors. In many cities, millions of vehicles operate every day. Exhaust fumes release nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds. These react in sunlight to form ground-level ozone, a key component of smog. Industrial activity is another major source. Factories release large amounts of smoke and chemical pollutants. In some cases, environmental regulations exist but are not strictly enforced. This allows pollution to continue at high levels. Weather also plays an important role. In certain conditions, such as temperature inversion, warm air traps cooler air near the ground. This prevents pollutants from rising and dispersing. As a result, smog becomes more concentrated and lasts longer. One important thing to understand is that smog is not always local. Pollution can travel long distances. A city may suffer from smog partly caused by emissions from nearby regions. This makes the problem more complex and harder to solve. The economic impact of smog is often underestimated. Healthcare costs increase as more people get sick. Worker productivity decreases because people are less healthy. Tourism can decline because visitors avoid heavily polluted areas. But beyond numbers, there is a psychological effect. Living under constant pollution changes how people feel about their environment. It creates stress, discomfort, and a sense of loss. A city should be a place of opportunity, but smog can turn it into a place of limitation. From my point of view, one of the biggest challenges is balancing economic growth with environmental protection. Many developing cities rely on industries that produce pollution. Reducing emissions may slow economic growth in the short term, which makes governments hesitant to take strong action. However, ignoring the problem does not make it disappear. In fact, it often becomes more expensive to fix later. Long-term damage to health and the environment can outweigh short-term economic gains. There are solutions, and some cities have already shown that change is possible. Improving public transportation can reduce the number of private vehicles on the road. Investing in clean energy sources like wind and solar can lower emissions from power generation. Stricter regulations on industrial emissions are also necessary. Companies should be required to use cleaner technologies and limit pollution. This may increase costs, but it also drives innovation and creates more sustainable systems. Urban planning can also make a difference. Designing cities with more green spaces can help improve air quality. Trees and plants absorb certain pollutants and provide cleaner air. While this is not a complete solution, it contributes to overall improvement. On an individual level, people can make small but meaningful changes. Using public transport, reducing energy consumption, and supporting environmentally responsible policies all help. While one person cannot solve the problem alone, collective action can create significant impact. Technology is also playing an increasing role. Air quality monitoring systems provide real-time data, helping people understand pollution levels. Electric vehicles are becoming more common, reducing emissions from transportation. Advances in clean energy are making alternatives more accessible. Despite these efforts, the reality is that smog remains a serious issue in many parts of the world. Progress is uneven, and in some places, conditions are getting worse rather than better. One reason is that solutions require coordination. Governments, businesses, and individuals all need to act together. If one group fails to do its part, the overall impact is limited. Another issue is awareness. While many people know that air pollution is harmful, not everyone understands how serious it can be. This reduces the urgency to demand change. From my perspective, smog is a clear example of how human activity can reshape the environment in harmful ways. It is not caused by a single event, but by countless small actions repeated over time. And that's what makes it both dangerous and difficult to solve. Imagine a city where the sky is always clear, where people can breathe freely without checking pollution levels, where children can play outside without risk. This is not an unrealistic dream. It is achievable, but only with consistent effort and strong commitment. The question is not whether we have the knowledge or the technology to reduce smog. We already do. The real question is whether we are willing to make the changes required. Because at the end of the day, every city has a choice. Continue growing under a sky that slowly becomes more toxic, or take action now before the damage becomes irreversible. So here's something to think about. If clean air became a limited resource tomorrow, something you had to pay for or compete to access, how much would it change the way you live today?